I got here in '94, late '94, and yeah, got a job at Hot Stuff, and then straight away basically met AB. He was at Fun Zone at the time, and then we were just sort of covering what they couldn't do, and then was within about a year, AB came back to this factory, and we were doing his boards full on. Or full time.
My brother-in-law, Graham Gantley, Kiwi, good surfer, from Piha, 77 stubbies, I think. So I meet this maniac one day after training, trying to take the tail out of me right from day one. That's how we connected, how we met. Through that, he decided he was staying. Through that, I was making hot stuff. Well, I was already making hot stuff for a couple of years. So then, yeah, I met him in that way and I went, this guy's a cool guy. He's a good surfer. He got a job around at Burford's, and then I went, hey, do you want to come and do a couple for us? And we 37 years of best friends, mate.
You know, Australia was the hub of surfboard manufacturing. He was making boards in New Zealand, and basically he just had to come here. It's like all of us, we have to come here. I mean, no disrespect to the New Zealand surf industry, but this is the place to make surfboards, you know.
Yeah. And we're best mates. We became very good friends early and easy. And then that's why I think the business developed so well, because we all had the passion. Yeah. We all had a bunch of good guys around us, and we had a lot of good surfers with us, and we did okay for a while. So,
AB travelled from day one, surfing and shaping. He basically, he'd turn up at a place. He was even doing it back in the early days in New Zealand. He'd go over to the west coast, to Raglan, from Gisborne, or vice versa, and do 2 weeks shaping there. And then he just started going to bigger and better places. Everybody wanted AB shapes. Yeah. He could walk into any factory in the world and they'd just say, please make us some boards. And really it would just pay for his holiday, really. That's how he's always worked. And
the fact that he could surf. I mean, you get a lot of shapers. In the older days, it used to be, unless you were a really good surfer, you didn't shape. That's why I'm a glasser. Well, it wasn't that bad. But you know what I mean? That was how that happened. And when they worked onto the channel thing, and they just grasped it. And I remember when Cole Smith went to Hawaii, that one time, I forget what mag it was, but he was just carving, and AB's just going, oh, I love these things. And he says he took that and turned it into what it was. And I remember the channels were a lot longer. There was no concave at that time, so you'd be flying and all of a sudden everything adjusted. But he was such a good surfer himself. So, you know, that was a great tool to have.
Whether it be Hawaii, America, New Zealand, you know, Bali, just Japan, it's endless. And because he's worked there over the 40 years or whatever, is making boards, you know, everybody, if it was 30 years ago, they remember AB like it was yesterday.
Allan just became the master blaster, and yet he was towing in at the age of 62. So the fact he could surf and just, you know, never say die, Al, in a sense. But he had to be the best at what he did. He always told us he was, and we believed him. But the fact is, even he would just come to an edge after it sanded, and if it just wasn't right, that's when we got Dale in to make sure they were always right. But yeah, that's how it was. I think he's, you know, the master blaster.
Right. Jim Pollard started the channels, and then Cole Smith was AB's best mate. They travelled through the Stubbies era, which was the hot stuff era. Yeah. And the channels were basically Cole Smith and AB both went their separate ways a bit with the channel design, but they went off Jim Pollard's idea. But each person's were different. AB's were a little bit more finely tuned. Cole's, he went up to 8, 10 channels, and then Jim's were a little bit different to both the Cole's and Allan's, but I think it would have been, what, late 70s? I think.
Late 70s.
Yeah.
You know, I've got photos of Al with this single fin it looks so old, but it's this single fin, flat bottom, you know, surfboard. Then it became the single fin channel as well. So that was really important. But it's very late 70s. Yeah. Very late 70s. And then it took off. They had really long channels. Look at these to here. Yeah. And that would travel, you know, way up above the board without concave. Yeah. You know, it's an absolute adjustment.
You ask anybody who rides a channel, it's like, yeah, you can't explain it. You know, it's power steering to a surfboard. And when the waves are good, it's exceptional. You know, and that's why, I mean, most of our market are, you know, travelling surfers. You know, they rely on their boards. They know the boards work. It's just been proven over 30 years, you know, that the channel works, you know, so the design hasn't changed since those early days. A few little things just to help production. You could ask any shaper in the world and they will all say Allan Byrne would have been part of their idea, whether it be if they've shaped a 6-channel, but as a shaper, there's no one like him, you know. Would get 10-foot boards here that don't fit in his room, and he'd walk them outside and just freehand the outline and just stand back and look at it, and he's going off a 7-foot template. I mean, no one can do that. I mean, most things are done on computer nowadays, but he'd just freehand it and just stand back. Look, that's where the hand and eye came from, you know. AB would open the door to anybody. Yes, watch me put the channels in and tell you everything, all his knowledge, because basically I think he was so confident in his ability that no one could really reproduce his skill. And he never was really that scared of people stealing his designs, you know. He wasn't going to places to shape, you know, it was to shape so he can surf, so you know. Yeah, basically it was, and that's the reason why he went to Bali. I mean, he was crook the week prior to going to Bali, he was in hospital, and because there's such a good swell going up there, he basically checked himself out and he's up there, you know, and that's how he lived his life, you know. He just chased swell, you know, which is gold, you know, and that we can't, we all want to do it, you know, and he's done it for his whole life.